Welcome back, everyone. Whether you've seen her on The Blaze or on your Facebook feed, Tomi Lahren is one of the hottest rising stars in conservative media and social media right now. So everyone, please welcome Tomi Lahren. Tomi, welcome. You flew in from Dallas just for the occasion. So, wow, you're 24 years old. You are just a rock star in the conservative community right now. But your social media following, you have 4.3 million followers on social media. Each of your videos are viewed an average of 5 million times. Why do you think you've resonated with so many people?
I think, in large part, I represent middle America. So you've got the two coasts, and those individuals seem to kind of just talk to each other. And then you've got all of middle America right there that's dying to have a voice. They don't really feel like they have one. They're not represented, you know, beyond their communities. So I think they watch me and they say, well, you know, she speaks like I do. She thinks like I do. She seems to maybe get it like I do. And I think that's why it's resonated. And also, I do something very different. There's not a whole lot of young conservative women out there. And so I provide that for a lot of young women. They don't have that.
Yeah, you told me in the commercial break that you always knew that this is what you wanted to do, but you're just 24. Do you feel like people discredit you because you're so young?
They do, but then I remind them that I'm sitting at the table with folks that are far older than me, and I'm here at 24, so I'm doing something right. You know, something that I'm doing is working.
Now, Tomi, far older, please, let's not date us.
Not you, ladies.
Okay.
Talk about Bill Maher.
Okay, good.
Sarah, you're only 25, so I mean, come on.
Like, I just started to feel old. Let's dial that back.
Personally, yeah. But let's talk about your voice, and let's talk about some hot topics, because that's what we do here. President Trump's travel ban 2.0, because this is the second one, was blocked earlier this week. 6 federal judges now have said that it's unconstitutional. But you support his plan. Are all those judges wrong?
I believe so. I don't believe it's unconstitutional. They're going with the Establishment Clause, but I think folks fail to also remember that the Establishment Clause in the Constitution doesn't cover non-citizens, A, and B, he is under his, and I think you could maybe attest to this as well, it is under his jurisdiction to be able to do this. He is able.
But didn't he shoot himself?
It all started when Tomi Lahren, a young, sharp-tongued conservative firecracker, walked onto the set of the VOA show known for its fiery panel of liberal-leaning hosts. You could feel the tension the second she sat down. Here was a 24-year-old conservative woman facing off against seasoned hosts who weren't used to being challenged so directly. The producers wanted drama, and they got it.
But didn't he shoot himself in the foot when he said a Muslim ban? Come on.
But this isn't a Muslim ban. This isn't a Muslim ban. Well, no, unless all the Muslims in the world have been able to pack themselves into 6 countries, this is not a Muslim ban. For a Muslim ban, India would be included. It's a high Muslim population. So, to me, this isn't a Muslim ban.
Does it bother you that he leaves out, like, Saudi Arabia, where he has a business?
No, I agree. I definitely think Saudi Arabia should be included. I do. I agree with you there, Joy. That's maybe one of the points we can have agreement on.
Let's celebrate. Can we celebrate right there? A little kumbaya.
To her point, though, I think part of the issue for me was that his rhetoric during the campaign, when you say stuff during a campaign like, you know, you want to ban all Muslims, or you use this broad terminology, then when you go to introduce policy, I happen to support this 2.0 as well, but when you institute policy that maybe doesn't do that, people look and say, well, what was the intent of this policy looking back? If you said X, Y, and Z over here, why are we not to believe that now this policy is intended to, in fact, ban Muslims, which you said? Is that not his biggest issue?
I think that it is. I mean, for Trump, rhetoric is usually the problem, and it's usually the basis of the problem. But I like to look to policy more than just talk. And when we're talking about campaign promises, wasn't it President Obama that said, if you like your health insurance, you can keep it? I mean, some things...
Well, one thing he said...
The conversation took a turn when the topic of Trump's travel ban came up. The second version of the ban had just been blocked by multiple federal judges, and the hosts wanted to corner Tomi on it. But she didn't flinch. In fact, she leaned in. Tomi fired back with total confidence, saying the ban wasn't unconstitutional at all.
They keep bringing it up over and over again.
But what about
Trump says something crazy every day?
What about the fact that Giuliani, because I think it was a slip in the administration when Giuliani spoke out about that, but when he came to me and said it was a Muslim ban, how do you remedy that?
Here's the deal. We have to be honest. I'm someone that's made a career on being very honest. To say that we don't have a problem with jihadists torn in countries that are, you know, Islamic faith dominates those countries. To say that that's not a problem would be to completely miss the real threat at hand. We have to name the enemy. That doesn't mean all Muslims are the enemy. When we look at these 6 countries, we can see they have a serious problem with terrorism. They have a serious problem with extremism, and it's Islamic extremism. We need to be honest. If we can't be honest, we're going to continue to chase our tails, and Americans aren't going to be safe, and Muslims are not going to be safe.
Let's talk a little bit. If we can move on, we have some investigations that are potentially going on right now, and I'm someone who supported investigations into Hillary's emails, into Benghazi, into the IRS targeting conservative groups. I'm sure you were on board with those as well. But now you have an investigation of the Trump campaign and his potential ties to Russia. I also think that that's a valid investigation, given that we know that his campaign had contact with Russian officials last year. That was at the same time that Russia, we know now, was in fact trying to interrupt our democratic process. Do you support this investigation as well into Trump's potential ties to Russia?
I support an investigation, but I support investigation into wiretapping claims as well. I think if you're going to investigate one, you need to investigate the other. I think that that's only fair, and I also think it's important to point out that President Obama's President Obama's CIA,
about Trump.
But I'm talking about President Obama's CIA director.
Yeah.
He came out and said, I see no ties, I see no collusion here. So when President Obama, who's a Hillary supporter...
Republicans said that too.
Right. Well, when Obama's acting CIA director comes out and says, I see no evidence that there's ties.
But there's no evidence of wiretapping either.
But right, so we should investigate both to the fullest.
She explained that it wasn't about race or religion, it was about national security. She pointed out that the Constitution doesn't give rights to non-citizens, and that as president, Trump had the full authority to control immigration from dangerous regions. The hosts pushed back, but she stood her ground. You could see it on their faces, they weren't expecting her to come this prepared. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and share more intriguing stories. Now let's continue.
For me, the difference is that for wiretapping, there really is no evidence for what he's saying right now, in my opinion. But when it comes to the other issue of the ties to Russia, there was a lot of communication. You have several people in his campaign. I'm concerned, for me, I don't care who the president of the United States is at the time, I'm concerned about protecting the democratic process. So for me, there is a big distinction between those investigations. Because one is more founded.
And that's where we can agree. I think both need to investigate.
But they cost money. They cost money. So if you're going to investigate it, I want to know that, I want some reason for the investigation. Otherwise, I don't want taxpayers on the line.
All right, let me ask you this question, because
this was just the beginning. Tomi wasn't backing down, and things were about to get even more uncomfortable for the ladies on The View. Then came the trap question. Didn't Trump call it a Muslim ban? The room tightened. This was supposed to be the moment she stumbled. But again, Tomi didn't even blink. She snapped back. This isn't a Muslim ban. If it were, then why are countries like India, which has one of the largest Muslim populations in the world, not on the list? And she didn't stop there. Unless you believe every Muslim on Earth lives in just 6 countries, the term Muslim ban doesn't even make sense. That landed hard. Even the audience got quieter. Joy Behar tried to catch her again, asking why Trump left out Saudi Arabia, country he had business ties with. And here's where Tomi did something most political guests avoid. She agreed with Joy. She looked right at her and said, "You're right, Saudi Arabia should be included." That threw them off. Instead of dodging or spinning, she called it out. No rehearsed politician, lines just a direct hit. The moment was small but powerful. On a show where guests usually try to keep the peace, Tomi was doing the opposite, challenging the questions, flipping them around, and even taking the upper hand. The women of The View were used to controlling the conversation, but this time, it was getting away from them, and fast. But the heat didn't stop there. The next host tried a different angle about the law, more about Trump's rhetoric. She said Trump's real problem wasn't the policy, but the way he talked about it. If he said he wanted to ban all Muslims during his campaign, she asked, how are we supposed to believe this travel ban isn't based on that same intention? Tomi leaned forward, cool and unfazed. I get it, she said. Trump's words aren't always polished, but I care more about policy than talk. I mean, didn't Obama also make promises during his campaign that turned out to be false? Remember, if you like your healthcare, you can keep it? That answer hit hard, not because it was shocking, but because it made a fair point. If you're going to criticize Trump's campaign rhetoric, you better be ready to apply the same standard to Democrats. And again, nobody was ready for that. Tomi wasn't just defending Trump, she was reframing the whole conversation. She even pointed out that Trump's so-called bad press had actually helped him win the 2016 election. Every time the media freaked out about what he said, she said, he stayed in the headlines and that's exactly why he won. Now, the audience wasn't just listening, they were hooked, because whether you agreed with her or not, one thing was clear, this girl came to play, and she wasn't scared of anyone on that couch. And just when you thought it couldn't get more intense, the conversation shifted to one of the biggest hot-button issues at the time: Trump's comments about Haitian migrants. One of the hosts brought up how Trump's remarks had sparked outrage, calling them offensive and debunked. But Tomi didn't backpedal. She used it to make an even bolder point. She said Trump's ability to spark outrage was part of his strategy. "You think it's chaos," she explained, "but it's actually smart. He says something that sounds wild. The media explodes, and suddenly he controls the narrative." She pointed out how quickly the conversation in the country shifted from whatever Project 2025 was to everyone suddenly talking about Haitian migrants just because Trump mentioned it. This wasn't just defense, this was offense. Tomi was showing that Trump's so-called recklessness was often calculated. She wasn't justifying the remarks, she was saying it worked. And whether you liked it or not, she was right. Trump had this uncanny ability to hijack media attention anytime he wanted. And Tomi? She was giving The View a live demonstration of that exact tactic. The co-hosts were scrambling to regain control, but it was too late. The narrative had shifted. The conversation was no longer about Trump's floss, it was about the media's obsession with them. And in that moment, the audience wasn't watching an interview, they were watching a political takedown happen in real time. Then came a curveball, the infamous quote from Rudy Giuliani, where he allegedly said Trump asked for a Muslim ban. The hosts saw their chance to corner Tomi again. "How do you explain that?" they asked, thinking this would be the final blow. But Tomi didn't stumble. She leaned into it even harder. "We have to be honest," she said, looking directly at them. "There is a problem in certain countries dominated by Islamic extremism. Ignoring that is not just dishonest, it's dangerous." She wasn't sugarcoating anything. She made it clear, not all Muslims are the enemy, but we do need to call out where the threats are coming from. "These 6 countries," she said, "they have serious problems with terrorism and extremism. If we can't name the threat, we can't fight it. And if we keep pretending it's something else, Americans won't be safe, and Muslims won't be safe either." You could feel the air in the room shift. No one expected her to speak that bluntly. On a show where vague answers and polite sidestepping are the norm, Tomi was hitting with unfiltered precision. The View's panel tried to redirect, tried to soften the tone, but it wasn't working. Tomi had just touched the 3rd rail of national security debates, and instead of getting burned, she made it look like she owned the power switch. From there, the conversation took another sharp turn, this time into the messy world of political investigations. One of the hosts tried to pivot the spotlight onto Trump's alleged ties to Russia. She pointed out that during the campaign, Trump's team had contact with Russian officials at the same time Russia was actively interfering with the U.S. election. "Don't you think that deserves an investigation?" And once again, Tomi didn't dodge. She said, "Sure, investigate it, but then let's also investigate the wiretapping claims against Obama. Let's be fair, look at both sides." That answer made the table freeze. The hosts weren't expecting her to agree to an investigation, but then flip it into a counterattack. She brought up something many people had forgotten, that the Obama administration's CIA director himself said he found no evidence of ties between Trump and Russia. "If we're going to open up this can of worms," Tomi said, "then we better look at every angle, not just the one that targets Trump." At that point, it wasn't even a debate anymore, it was a chess match. Every time the hosts tried to trap her, she flipped the board. She didn't deflect or panic. She invited the hard questions and turned them into weapons. The tension in the studio was real. This wasn't just some quick guest segment. This was starting to look like a full-on political ambush, and Tomi was the one walking out with the upper hand. And that's when everything started unraveling for the View hosts, not Tomi. She reminded the audience that the whole Russia collusion story had already started to fall apart. She pointed straight at the Steele dossier, calling it what it really was, a complete fraud. "It wasn't just bad intel," she said. "It was made up, bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton's team, and the media, they ran with it like it was gospel." You could almost see the co-hosts flinch. This wasn't speculation anymore, this was public record. Government sources had already confirmed the Clinton campaign funded the dossier, but Tomi didn't stop there. She dragged the media into it, saying they weren't just fooled, they were complicit. They pushed this story non-stop, she said, pretending it was official intelligence when it was literally opposition research. And here's where she really turned the knife. If a media outlet knowingly lies to the public while pretending to be objective news, that's not journalism, that's propaganda. And yeah, maybe they should be held accountable for that. No one on the panel had an answer. They just sat there, letting it land. Because whether you liked Tomi or hated her, she was saying things that stuck. It wasn't about liking Trump, it was about pulling back the curtain on how far some people were willing to go just to take him down. Then she dropped the final hammer, Obamagate. While the hosts tried to steer the conversation back to Trump's behavior, Tomi doubled down and brought up what she called the real scandal. The Obama administration allegedly working with the FBI to spy on Trump before he even took office. She called it illegal. She called it disgusting. And most importantly, she called it intentional. She didn't mince words. Obama's team was colluding with intelligence agencies to sabotage Trump's campaign, she said. Meanwhile, the media was too busy painting Obama as some flawless, scandal-free hero. She even called out specific names like Fareed Zakaria, saying they kept pushing this fantasy of the good old days under Obama while ignoring what she saw as one of the most corrupt political maneuvers in modern history. According to her, this wasn't just about wiretapping, it was about power, the abuse of it, and the media helping to cover it up. At that moment, The View wasn't even arguing anymore. They were just trying to keep control of the conversation. But it was clear the momentum had shifted. Tomi wasn't just defending Trump now. She was going after the entire media political machine that tried to bury him. The studio still had its fake smiles and polite interruptions, but underneath it, you could see the panic. Because the more Tomi talked, the harder it was to pretend she didn't have receipts. Absolutely, here's an additional part that smoothly fits right before the final section, keeping the narrative flow tight and scandalous, and extending the confrontation between Tomi Lahren and The View hosts for maximum tension. At this point, the conversation had already gone off script. The View's panel, usually used to steering the narrative and cornering their guests with layered, emotionally charged questions, found themselves in unfamiliar territory. Tomi wasn't scrambling or apologizing, she was escalating. And now, she took things a step further, turning the conversation into a deeper critique of the political and media establishment. She started hammering the idea that the outrage against Trump was selective and manufactured. "You're mad at what Trump says," she told the co-hosts, "but you weren't mad when Obama droned American citizens without trial, or when Hillary deleted 33,000 emails after they were subpoenaed. Why is it only a scandal when it's Trump?" That hit like a punch. The audience reaction was mixed, some clapped, others clearly didn't know how to respond. But Tomi was already moving to the next point. She brought up the double standards in how the media treats conservative voices, especially women. If a liberal woman says something outrageous, she's called bold and brave. When a conservative woman speaks out, we get called hateful, bigoted, dangerous. One of the hosts tried to interrupt, saying that criticism isn't the same as censorship. Tomi interrupted right back, "No, you're not just criticizing, you're trying to silence people like me. You mock us, label us, and then act shocked when we push back." The studio fell into an awkward silence for just a moment. It was the kind of silence that happens when someone says the uncomfortable thing out loud, the kind of thing that's supposed to stay unsaid. And then came the topic that lit a fuse social media suppression. Tomi leaned in, eyes locked with the panel. "Do you know how many of my posts get flagged, demonetized, or shadow banned just because I say something that doesn't fit the narrative? That's not a free platform, that's digital censorship." She then turned it personal, saying that The View itself was part of that ecosystem. You create this echo chamber, where certain ideas are allowed to be expressed, and others get laughed at or shouted down. But look around, people aren't buying it anymore. They're leaving the mainstream because they're sick of being told what to think. One of the hosts tried to respond by mentioning rising misinformation and the responsibility of platforms to limit harmful content. Tomi didn't give an inch. You think people are too stupid to decide for themselves? That's what this really is, control. You want to protect people from dangerous ideas? Let's be real. You just want to protect your side from being challenged. This wasn't just a guest interview anymore, it was a full-blown ideological standoff, and Tomi Lahren wasn't just surviving it, she was owning it. The hosts looked visibly rattled. You could tell this was not the way they expected this segment to go. And just like that, we arrived at the final moment of the exchange. One of the hosts made a final attempt to push back. She insisted that the wiretapping claims Tomi kept bringing up had no real evidence behind them. But when it came to the Trump-Russia situation, she argued, there was communication, there were contacts. She said, "I don't care who the president is, I just want the democratic process protected." It sounded reasonable on the surface, but Tomi didn't let it slide. "Then let's investigate both," she said. "If we're really about truth, then truth shouldn't depend on who it helps or hurts." And again, she didn't flinch. She made it clear that if taxpayer dollars were going to be used, then they should be used fairly. "Don't waste people's money chasing one side of a story," she said, while ignoring the other half. The back and forth kept going, but the energy had shifted completely. Tomi had gone through every major landmine Trump's rhetoric. The travel ban, Muslim countries, Haiti, Russia, Obama, media lies, and not once did she retreat. By the time the segment wrapped, it wasn't clear if the View hosts had lost control of the interview or if they realized they had underestimated her from the beginning. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also, drop your thoughts in the comments. See you on the next one.